Imagine always being the one who listens, supports, and sacrifices for others. Yet, when you need them most, they are nowhere to be found. The weight of their negativity drains you, but you hesitate to act because they are family or friends. Picture this. A woman sits alone in a dimly lit room, scrolling through a list of unanswered messages. She has always been the person others turn to, lending money, offering advice, and being the pillar of strength. But now, in her time of need, there is only silence. Loneliness creeps in and the painful truth sets in. Some relationships only take and never give. The ancient philosopher Marcus Aurelius once said, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Yet, some relationships can corrupt those thoughts, trapping you in cycles of guilt, obligation, and emotional exhaustion. When someone consistently disrespects you, manipulates you, or refuses to change, it's important to ask yourself, are they helping you grow or are they holding you back? The true challenge lies in recognizing these toxic ties before they consume you. And once you realize their impact, how do you cut them without guilt or regret? The truth is, some relationships, even with family and friends, may no longer be healthy, and knowing when it's time to let go is crucial for your peace and well-being. Have you ever had to walk away from a toxic relationship? Share your experience in the comments. Stick with me until the end, where I will reveal the most subtle yet dangerous sign of all, one that many people ignore until it's too late. If you're ready to reclaim your peace and strength, consider subscribing and joining this journey towards self-mastery. Now, let's begin. There comes a time when it's necessary to avoid people who drain your energy. Have you ever noticed how someone who once brought joy into your life now feels like a distant memory? It's not because of single conflict or betrayal, but simply because life has led you both down different paths. This is a natural process. People change, values shift, and directions diverge. Relationships, like seasons, have their time. Clinging to what once was out of nostalgia or obligation only leads to discomfort and disconnection. A colleague of mine once shared the story of his childhood best friend. They had been inseparable, watching movies, playing sports, and dreaming of their futures together. But as the years passed, their worlds grew apart. One moved to a bustling city to build a career and start a family, while the other remained in their hometown, embracing a simpler life. At first, my colleague tried to preserve the friendship, forcing conversations that felt unnatural, trying to reignite a bond that no longer existed. But the more he tried, the more strained their meetings became. Eventually, he realized that their friendship had already served its purpose. Letting go didn't mean he no longer cared. It meant he respected what they had without forcing it into a shape that no longer fit. Relationships are like a dance. Both partners must move in harmony. When the rhythm no longer aligns, the dance becomes awkward and exhausting. Instead of blaming yourself or the other person, recognize that stepping back isn't abandonment. It's wisdom. It allows both individuals to grow freely, without the weight of an artificial connection. Letting go doesn't mean erasing someone from your life, nor does it mean harboring bitterness or regret. It means creating space and acknowledging that some relationships belong in the past, not because they were bad, but because they've already given you what they were meant to. Holding on too tightly to something that has naturally faded only brings unnecessary suffering. Life is full of change, and so are relationships. The key is knowing when to cherish, when to nurture, and when to let go. A gentle parting can often be more honorable than forcing something that no longer serves you. There are also relationships that involve constant quarrels, which you should avoid. Have you ever felt like every conversation with someone turns into a battle? No matter how small the issue, it quickly escalates into a war of words, forcing you to take sides as if life were a never-ending competition. These individuals don't just bring chaos into their own lives. They drag you into it, draining your peace and clarity in the process. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." A wise person doesn't waste energy in pointless disputes. Instead, they prioritize harmony, wisdom, and self-control. I once had a friend who, though outwardly confident, was always quick to turn disagreements into full-blown conflicts. One evening, during a casual gathering, a minor debate about travel plans spiraled out of control. Instead of accepting a difference of opinion, He demanded that I take his side, as though loyalty meant blind agreement. In that moment, I realized something important. Our friendship wasn't based on mutual respect, but on an unspoken expectation that I should always support him, even at the cost of my own perspective. This was the day I realized that relationships built on constant conflict, defensiveness, and the need to be right are not true relationships. They are battlegrounds where no one truly wins. Arguing excessively is not a sign of intelligence or strength. It's a symptom of insecurity, a restless mind that mistakes noise for power. A person who constantly argues does not seek truth or understanding. They seek validation, control, and dominance over others. And when you are around them long enough, you become part of their storm, instead of engaging. The Stoic approach is to detach, to refuse to be pulled into unnecessary conflicts, and to guard your peace as you would a rare treasure. If you find yourself in a cycle of endless arguments, always defending yourself or mediating someone else's disputes, take a step back. Ask yourself, is this relationship nurturing my growth, or is it draining my spirit? True wisdom lies in knowing when to speak and when to walk away. Peace of mind is far more valuable than winning a debate. Another type of person to avoid is someone who takes other people's worries lightly. Each of us carries a unique burden, some visible, some hidden, but all equally significant. Life doesn't measure suffering on a common scale, and yet one of the most disappointing experiences is confiding in someone only to have your struggles dismissed or overshadowed by their own. This isn't just a lack of empathy. It's a quiet erosion of trust, which is the foundation of any meaningful relationship. Seneca once wrote, "Wherever there is a human being, there is an opportunity for kindness." True connection is built on mutual understanding, the ability to listen and honor another person's experiences. But not everyone embraces this. Some people magnify their own difficulties while making yours seem trivial, as if struggles only matter when they belong to them. I remember a time when I confided in a longtime friend about the challenge of balancing work with caring for my aging parents. It was a difficult period, and I simply needed someone to listen. Instead, he brushed aside my concerns and immediately shifted the conversation to his own work stress, never acknowledging what I had just shared. That moment wasn't just disappointing. It was painful. It made me realize that relationships without empathy are not worth maintaining. Respect isn't found in grand gestures, but in the simplest of actions. Genuinely listening, acknowledging someone's feelings, and offering support instead of competition. A heartfelt, "I hear you," that must be difficult. Or even a silent moment of understanding can mean more than 1,000 empty words. You deserve relationships built on respect, gratitude, and care that is freely given, not because it is expected, but because it is genuine. Never feel guilty for distancing yourself from those who make you feel unseen. True strength lies in surrounding yourself with people who celebrate your joys, console you in sorrow, and walk beside you without judgment. To cultivate meaningful relationships, we must also cultivate compassion. In doing so, we not only build stronger connections, but we also create a life that is truly worth living. Lastly, avoid those who don't honor their word. Have you ever waited for someone who never showed up, offering only a weak excuse or worse, no explanation at all? That sinking feeling is more than just disappointment. It's the painful realization that you are not a priority in their life. A promise isn't just a collection of words. It's a silent contract of respect, a bond of trust. When someone breaks their word, they aren't just being forgetful or careless. They're showing how little they value your time, your expectations, and your presence in their life. The most disheartening betrayal isn't just broken promises. It's when they forget they ever made one. I recall a time when I was waiting at my favorite coffee shop for a friend, as we had planned. After an hour, my phone buzzed with a message. "Totally forgot we had plans today, sorry." No urgency, no regret, just indifference. It wasn't the first time. In that moment, I realized something crucial. She didn't intend to hurt me, but her actions spoke louder than her words. A relationship that lacks reliability and respect is an emotional burden, one that weighs on your spirit far more than you might realize. A healthy relationship is never built on empty promises, indifference, or thoughtless disregard. It's built on commitment, on words that hold weight and actions that align with them. If someone repeatedly fails to honor their word, It's not an accident, it's a pattern. Enduring this only diminishes your sense of self-respect. Remember, respect to yourself sometimes means walking away. You deserve relationships where both sides value and honor each other. If someone cannot do that, don't hesitate to step back. Every time you say no to those who don't respect you, you create space for those who will. Never forget, you are worthy of love and also respect in both words and actions. There was a time when I had a friend who was deeply convinced that his way of life was the only correct one. Every conversation we felt like an endless lecture or debate I never asked for. He wasn't interested in having a meaningful dialogue. His goal was always to convince me to change my views. Initially, I tried engaging with him, reading the material he recommended, and reasoning with him, thinking that a healthy discussion could lead to some mutual understanding. But after each interaction, I found myself feeling completely drained, as if I had spent all my energy defending myself against an adversary rather than having a thoughtful exchange with a friend. As time passed, I came to a profound realization. Arguments rarely change minds, especially when both sides are solely focused on being right. More often than not, these debates become a clash of egos, where the goal shifts from seeking wisdom to trying to dominate the other. Even if you win the argument, the victory feels hollow, built on resentment and frustration rather than genuine understanding. When respect is lost, the foundation of any relationship starts to erode. The philosopher Epictetus once said that it is impossible for a person to learn something they believe they already know. A truly wise person doesn't force their beliefs on others. They listen, they observe, and they know when to step back. True growth, I realize, comes from humility, not coercion. The need to always be right is a heavy burden to carry. Letting go of that need brings something far more valuable than any argument could ever offer: inner peace. If someone in your life constantly pressures you to adopt their beliefs, refuses to respect your perspective, and sees disagreement as a threat rather than an opportunity to learn, it may be time to distance yourself. Surround yourself with those who encourage thoughtful discussion, who accept differences, and who value respect over control. Ultimately, true connection isn't about agreeing on everything. It's about understanding and finding common ground. I also learned the importance of avoiding those who constantly complain about themselves. Have you ever felt like you were nothing more than an emotional dumping ground for someone, where they come to you not to connect, but simply to unload their endless frustrations, sorrows, and complaints? While everyone needs someone to lean on during tough times, true sharing should come from a place of mutual support, not selfishness. Someone who continuously complains without considering your feelings isn't seeking companionship. They're using you as an emotional receptacle. Over time, this doesn't just drain your energy. It pulls you into a vortex of negativity that was never yours to carry in the first place. I once had a close friend named Sarah, a former colleague who was an important part of my life during one of the most challenging periods I've ever faced. My mother had become critically ill, and I found myself juggling work while caring for her. I was desperately in need of emotional support. Yet Sarah never seemed to notice my struggles. Instead, she would come to me almost daily to unload her grievances. "I hate my job," she'd say. "My boss is awful. My husband never helps me with anything." Even as I struggled to keep myself afloat, Sarah never once paused to ask how I was doing or offer any comfort. Then, one day, after my mother had undergone a major surgery, Sarah called me not to check on how I was holding up, but complained that I hadn't responded to her messages quickly enough. It was at that moment that I realized something had to change. I knew I couldn't continue down this path. I had too much on my plate, and I needed the people around me to understand and share the emotional load. I finally gathered the courage to set a boundary. "Sarah," I said, "I can't keep doing this. I need the people in my life to be more understanding of what I'm going through." There was a long silence on the other end of the phone, followed by an uncomfortable distance that grew between us. It was painful, but I knew it was necessary. Not every sadness or frustration deserves to be shared, and no one is obligated to carry someone else's emotional burdens, especially when they have their own to bear. Sometimes, stepping back and setting boundaries is the healthiest decision, even if it means losing someone who wasn't capable of offering the kind of support you truly need. At times, we find ourselves carrying the burdens of others, often at the expense of our own well-being. There are people who take without ever pausing to listen, acknowledge, or reciprocate, and these relationships rarely build any lasting or meaningful connection. Marcus Aurelius once said, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you'll find strength." This insight teaches us that when we allow others' negativity to drain us, it's essential to protect our energy. One of the ways to do this is by listening selectively, choosing to save our energy for people who truly care about our well-being. Listening is not just about hearing. It involves observing, empathizing, and creating connections where both parties feel valued. Above all, it's important to remember that you are not obligated to feel guilty for prioritizing your peace. The world can be unkind, but you always have the choice to be kind to yourself. Some people can be perpetual complainers, bringing up the same problems over and over again without making any effort to change. While it's natural to seek empathy from others, it becomes exhausting when someone persistently dwells on their struggles without ever attempting to find a solution. I had a colleague who constantly complained about her job, and at first, I listened with an open mind, offering suggestions to improve her situation. But no matter how many ideas I offered, she dismissed them, choosing instead to dwell on her complaints. After realizing she wasn't interested in change, I decided to take a different approach. I told her that while I valued our relationship, continuing in circles like this wasn't benefiting either of us. If she genuinely wanted to improve, I would be there to support her, but the responsibility had to come from her. Although she didn't take it well, I knew I had done the right thing. Listening can be an act of kindness, but endless listening without progress is draining for both people involved. Sometimes, offering honest advice, even when difficult, is an act of real care. Meaningful friendships aren't formed by mere sympathy, but by mutual support and encouragement. As Epictetus wisely said, "If you wish to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid." Growth often requires discomfort, honesty, and a willingness to change. Sometimes the best thing you can do for someone is to step back from conversations that lead nowhere and focus on relationships where growth is mutual. Another type of person to avoid is someone who lives in the past, constantly fixating on their former achievements, as if those are the only moments that define them. Initially, these stories might seem impressive, even inspiring, but over time, it becomes clear that the person is not sharing these tales to uplift others, but to cover up dissatisfaction with their present life. I once knew someone who would never pass up an opportunity to boast about the prestigious awards he had won years ago. Every conversation was an attempt to relive past glories, and yet, whenever the topic shifted his current life, he would quickly deflect or change the subject. It became painfully obvious that he clung to these past victories because he had nothing meaningful to hold on to in the present. Instead of garnering admiration, his constant boasting began to push people away. True confidence doesn't need to be validated by past achievements. It's evident in how we carry ourselves today. As Marcus Aurelius once wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." Someone obsessed with their past can often be trapped in an illusion, unable to move forward. Holding on to past successes doesn't elevate our worth. It limits our potential for growth. Worse yet, excessive self-promotion can make others feel undervalued, creating distance instead of connection. A truly confident and content person doesn't need to flaunt their past. They let their present actions and character speak for them. Humility is a powerful trait, making individuals more approachable and strengthening relationships built on mutual respect. The most respected people don't need to shout about their achievements. Their quiet confidence speaks volumes. Choosing the right people to surround yourself with is crucial. The strongest relationships are not formed by those who constantly seek validation, but by those who strive for growth and encourage the same in others. Protect your peace by choosing relationships that uplift you and distancing yourself from those that drain you. It's okay to walk away from toxic situations without guilt or hesitation. As you continue on your journey of self-mastery, always remember that you have the power to create the life you desire by protecting your energy and surrounding yourself with people who genuinely care about your well-being.